And welcome to the next session of the Free to Fly online conference and fashion show. And I cannot begin to tell you how excited I am to be talking with our guest this evening, because this is one of the first informational experts that we've brought in that is directly tied to domestic violence and the specific issues that face survivors out there. So it is Charlie Cordin, and she is with us from Raleigh, North Carolina. Is that right?
Yep.
Raleigh, North Carolina, and she is an expert in post-traumatic stress disorder, which is what PTSD stands for, and she's here to help us understand what PTSD is and a few more things that she's learned over the years in her expert travel. So first of all, thanks and welcome to the Free to Fly online conference. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. And it's my company, Fire Sisters Rising, that my main focus is to help women recognize, vocalize, and mobilize to stop the cycle of domestic violence in their lives. And I'm a survivor myself. I've been free for 9 years. So, it's near and dear to my heart. And I feel that we all have a responsibility once we have come through the other side of something to lay our hand down and help somebody else up. So that's why I started my business, and I have done a ton of research over the years on PTSD, and not necessarily PTSD as much as just overcoming trauma because of the trauma that I went through in my life and that other people, friends, relatives, whoever have gone through in their lives. It's always been a very interesting topic for me. So, so should we jump into the presentation?
Absolutely. We are here to learn for sure. So I will actually get this situated so that you can do the presenting of the slides. So there you are. That should be on your screen to be able to take over.
Okay. Let's see if this works. Okay. Can you see my screen?
Oh, I can see your screen. You can start the show.
Great. Awesome. So this presentation is all about understanding PTSD. I'm going to take you through some of the facts, figures, some of the misunderstandings on what people are thinking about what PTSD is today. So let's jump in. So a lot of people think that PTSD only affects war veterans, and I want to make sure that I make clear that that's not the case. You can get PTSD from any number of things, from abuse and neglect, if you're in a car crash, if you are, there's a number of people that are veterans that are impacted. If people have been bullied as a child, they can also have PTSD from being bullied. And it could be a number of other things as well. It can be if you have somebody break into your house, that actually happened to me last year, and my kids went through a period of, kind of overcoming that trauma. And, but it's things like that that could affect you in multiple ways. It can lead to PTSD. It doesn't always necessarily lead to PTSD. Whoops. Why I did that. But it can affect anyone. It can affect men, women, children, all races, all income levels, all walks of life. So that's the other thing that I hear a lot from people is that, not only does it only affect veterans, but, I don't hear about it affecting all of these other people. And, it's only people of a certain income level that get impacted. And it's just not true. It can affect anybody from any income level and in all walks of life. I don't know why it's doing that. So 70% of the population.
Okay, you're not switching on there. It's not showing. Have you set it to slideshow on your screen?
Yeah.
Maybe we're not getting the right one. Did you choose the right? Oh, okay, now it's showing the right one. Okay, continue. Sorry.
Okay. So yeah, so 70% of the population will be impacted by trauma at some point in their lives. That's just and trauma can be anything, like I mentioned. It can be bullying. It can be something very simple, like, I fell and, hurt my arm or something like that. People can experience PTSD from that as well. But it's usually around 8% that will experience the PTSD out of the 70% that have been impacted by trauma. And I'll talk about why some of the people don't end up getting PTSD and some do. But women are twice as likely as men to experience PTSD. And there's no hard facts around why that is. I think it's, not to be, I don't know. Women do tend to, live more on their emotions than men do. That's just kind of part of our fabric and makeup. So that could be part of it, because PTSD is heavily involved with the emotions and our ability to control our emotions. So why does PTSD happen? So PTSD happens because your brain is going into survival mode. It is trying to figure out how it can survive whatever that trauma is that you're going through in your life. So, and it actually has a real impact on your brain as you're going through that trauma. So it will cause a reduction in the hippocampus. And the hippocampus is where your memory function and where you process your memories. So if they're past or present, it'll help you to figure out, is that memory in the past? Is that memory in the present? And then you have your amygdala, which is where you process emotions. So any anxiety or panic or any other, high stress, stuff like that is all processed through the processed as emotions in your amygdala. Oh my God, I can't say that word. And there's a reduction also in the volume of the medial prefrontal cortex. And the prefrontal cortex is important because it regulates your emotional responses. So when you look at all of this stuff, there's actually a real thing that's happening to your brain. Your brain is going into survival mode. And what happens in that process.
Stop for a second, sorry, Charlie, but they are not seeing the slides on the other side of the screen. So if we could try, now when it's moving forward. That is so weird.
Weird. I don't know why it's doing that.
Now it moved down. I'm not sure.
Down?
I can see the one. Okay, her face image only, but it's been like that. We saw the slides for a moment or two, but otherwise it's been a picture of her face.
Okay. Let's try.
She says there they are now. So now they are on the screen.
I wonder if I can just show it this way. No?
Actually, we're seeing it and it appears. I'm just waiting for word back from the viewer. And yes, they are there now. So we can continue. Sorry about that, fans out there watching. So technical difficulties. So we can continue again, Charlie. Sorry about that.
Yeah, so I mean, there's not really a lot of words on the slide anyway. It's just kind of, helping you process that these are the real physical things that are happening in your brain as your brain is trying to survive whatever trauma you're experiencing. So when you think about it, it's the main point that I wanted to get across is that it's going into that survival mode. And what happens with PTSD is your brain will, through the amygdala and how it's processing the emotions and regulating your prefrontal cortex and regulating those emotional responses, it will continue to regulate that the same way that it did as in the first time that you experienced the trauma. So unless you work through the emotions in some other way, you will continue to have that same response in your brain. I don't know why it's doing that. That's so weird. Now,
It is weird because it's gone back to your face again on the other end. You know what I'm going to do on this end? And now we've got it again. There we go.
Why don't I try just doing this and see?
Okay, let's see if that works.
Yeah, we'll try doing this. Yeah, so there are multiple signs that you will see with people that have experienced some kind of trauma. Like they're really frightened of loud noises. They have this unshakable fear of surprises. Maybe they shake uncontrollably, like they can't figure out why they're shaking uncontrollably, but it's just a controlled response that's happening in their brain. Maybe they're paralyzed in certain situations. And maybe I'm sure if you have ever talked to somebody who's been through some kind of trauma in their life, what they'll do is they'll replay that trauma over and over again. Maybe not during the day. Sometimes people do it during the day, but then other times people will do it all night long in their dreams. And then it keeps them from being able to sleep, because they're afraid that they're going to be experiencing that same trauma. Because sometimes your dreams can feel very real. And maybe I can, yeah, no, that's better. Sometimes your dreams can feel very real. So you'll feel like you're experiencing that trauma over and over again. If you have people that are really consistently distrusting other people, they're very suspicious, they're very jealous, detached, angry, really depressed. Chances are they haven't been able to change how their brain is processing those emotions so that they can, see it for what it is. And I'm gonna talk a little bit about that when I go on to the next slide. But these are kind of some of the signs and symptoms of that someone is experiencing some sort of PTSD related to a traumatic incident in their life. Now let's see if this is going to work. Whoops.
No, we went one too many.
Yeah,
there we go.
It's harder to do when it's like this. So what I preach to everyone, and I really, if you take nothing else from this session today, I want you to take from this session that medication is absolutely not necessary to overcome PTSD. There are a number of techniques that are out on the market today that have been around for a very long time that have proven extremely effective in overcoming those methods of or those symptoms of PTSD. So EMDR, in case I'm just going to walk through these because people may or may not be familiar with them. EMDR is eye movement desensitization reprocessing. So what normally happens when somebody does EMDR on you, and I published a blog post on this today because I knew I would get some questions on it. But what normally happens with EMDR is they will move, they'll have you focus on an object and you'll move your eyes back and forth as you become really, really present with whatever that traumatic incident was, with the emotions around that particular traumatic incident. And then you will move your eyes back and forth. Or sometimes they have like a little, it's almost like a ticker or something that you hold on to, and it'll send like a little electrical impulse. But what that is basically doing is it's helping your brain to reprocess that memory in a different way than what it was before. And it allows you to detach from the emotional response to that traumatic event. So So EMDR is definitely one thing that I recommend. It was extremely helpful for me as I was overcoming the trauma in my life. You know, and you have to find somebody that's really good at doing it, you know, and make sure that you get a good reference or something like that, because you don't want people, you know, just like you don't want to go to a bad acupuncturist. You don't want to go to somebody who doesn't exactly know how the brain works with techniques like this. And all of these techniques, EMDR, EFT, which is the emotional freedom technique, NLP, which I'm sure a lot of you have heard of, is neuro-linguistic programming. All of these are all just changing the neural pathways in the brain. That's all they're doing, is working to help your emotions process the way you should be processing them and detach them from the traumatic event. So EFT, I'll explain a little bit about that as well. EFT is something I've been doing off and on throughout my life as well. And I'm just going to give you a really simple example that anyone can use if you have any kind of anxiety or fear or something like that. It's a very simple technique. You just on the fleshy part of your hand, so the part that you would normally maybe do a karate chop on, you just take your other fingers on your other hand and start tapping. I know they can't see me, right?
Not at the moment, but we can do this a little bit later as well.
Yeah, so you just start tapping, and then you just say a statement to yourself, and you say something like, even though, I'll just use, because I used the example of my break-in last year, even though somebody broke into my house while me and my kids were there alone, I am deeply connected and love myself. So, and you can use that for anything that you've gone through in your life, and all that is doing is just helping you to realize that that incident does not define my connection to myself. It does not define my my ability to love myself. It does not define my ability to accept myself. It doesn't, you know, it doesn't have any bearing. That particular event is in the past. It's no longer in the present. So I can deal with the present as it is, instead of keeping going and dealing with it as if it's related to the same event. And NLP is the same kind of thing. And I don't know if anybody's ever listened to Tony Robbins. Tony Robbins is a huge one for doing NLP, and I've been following Tony Robbins forever. And you know, NLP is very strong in keeping you in the present, bringing you back to the present, back to the present, back to the present. And what is your outcome for the future? Like, what do you want your future to look like? And what behaviors need to change in order to, you know, have you moving in the right direction? So that you're constantly like moving forward. And, you know, and I'm certified as a high performance coach through Brendan Burchard as well, the High Performance Institute. And Brendan is a huge one for using EFT. We actually have a exercise that he always takes us through where we do EFT in his seminars to kind of reinforce some of the words and stuff that we use. You know, like if you want to be have more clarity, or you want to have more compassion or something like that, you can use EFT to kind of figure out what you want to change in your life and how you want to move forward. So all three of these are extremely effective techniques that don't require any medication, and will probably get you over PTSD way faster than any medication. In fact, they're proving more and more that medication is not helping PTSD at all. There's a bunch of recent studies that have come out saying that PTSD is no longer classified as a mental illness. It's, it's basically what I already talked about. It's how your brain and your mind are working together to process those emotions. That's all it is. So on my, let's see if I can do this. There we go. So what I mentioned just a little bit ago was how you can keep moving beyond PTSD. So all the techniques that I just talked about, most of them are using things like EFT and EMDR are using meridians. I hope most people are familiar with using those, and acupuncture and stuff like that to try and get you to clear some of the stuff that's blocking your meridians right now. And as you do that stuff, you will notice that you start becoming more free. You will feel more free. You will feel free of that heaviness of the, all that emotional stuff that was attached to that traumatic event. And the more you get free, the more you're going to want to do more things to make you feel more free. And that's where this slide comes in. You'll start exercising again. You'll start enjoying your life more. You'll start living with passion, practicing mindfulness and, do mindfulness. I know that's a huge buzzword right now, but, doing meditation and really getting really, really centered in who you are and, really connecting to who that person is that you want to be, the more authentic and the more that you're living in your true purpose, the more the fears and anxieties or whatever it is about those events, the more they will dissipate. So I think just continue to do all of these things, and I know that it will help you grow beyond whatever PTSD symptoms you might be having. So I think I had one more slide, but it was about me.
But that's great. Well, we'd love to know a little bit more about you before we get to talking with you, because it looks like you've got an amazing list of skills.
Yeah. So as I mentioned, I didn't mention on this call, but I was in the corporate world for 25 years. I was doing all technology program management, and because I'm a survivor myself, and I've been free for 9 years, I had always wanted to start my own business. And when I thought about what do I want to do if I start my own business, helping women survivors of domestic violence is the number one thing that came to mind. So I embarked on this business, and so I do professional speaking. I am an executive coach. I have a number of executives that I help with whatever is going on in their lives, but I use my high performance coaching with those executives. And when I talk about high performance, as I mentioned through the High Performance Institute and Brendan Burchard, we focus on clarity and energy and passion and purpose and productivity and all those little keys that you need to get your life to the next level. So, and that's been a huge passion of mine. Like, even though I essentially spent the first 37 years of my life being abused in some way, I was always able to succeed professionally. So that was kind of my safe space, my salvation, my place where I knew that I could do something and succeed and get away from it all and all of that stuff. So I've always been a high performer throughout my career. So it seemed natural to me to become a high performance coach, because that just makes total sense to me. And Brendan, in case you haven't heard of him, he's very similar to Tony Robbins. He's always moving you forward, moving you forward, moving you forward. Like, do you want to stay stuck in your past? Do you want to stay trapped in the same cycles and the same thought patterns and everything that you've had your whole life? No, let's move you forward. I know that happened. Let's honor that happened. But at the same time, where do you want to be now? So let's get you there. So around that, I recently, actually, I have a book that will be launched this Friday.
Congratulations!
Thank you. It's Fire Sisters Rising, and it's overcoming the impossible to achieve the extraordinary. So this book is all about, it's a little bit about my story, but it's more about what are all the different things that you need to do to overcome any of the mindsets that you get trapped in when you've gone through any kind of abuse in your life. And, I have a number, just a long list of things, mindsets that I needed to challenge. And when I broke the cycle of abuse in my life, it was when I got pregnant, and I knew that there was no way I was going to let my son grow up in the same environment that I grew up in. So I broke off that marriage and took us on a journey. And for 2 years, all I did was challenge every single mindset that I had. And that's what this book is all about, is all of the different things that I challenged in my own thinking that I needed to overcome. So, yeah, so that's my story.
And it is an incredible story, and thanks so much for sharing it here today and the information on PTSD, because I think that a lot of us get caught up in the news headlines and aren't really aware of what it really means, because of course we always see the most dramatic and the most tragic of situations in the news or the news media, and there isn't a real understanding of what it is and how it feels, and the fact that it is related to any trauma. It doesn't necessarily have to be the trauma of war. We know that first responders often have issues with PTSD, women who've been abused, people who have been, as you were, robbed. So there's definitely a lot of cases that there can be PTSD. And I wrote down a couple of questions as I was going through the EMDR article. Where can we find that blog post that you had on EMDR?
Yes, it's on my site, firesistersrising.com.
We'll make sure that we get that up and into there. And the other question I had for you, EFT, is that the same as what they call tapping, or is that something different?
Yep, it's the same thing.
Okay, because sometimes there is different.
You me before, but this is what I was doing. You're literally just tapping the side of your hand, and there's multiple points that they talk about tapping. And actually, I'm gonna write another blog post on EFT as well, but. Because you can do the top of your head, and Brendan actually walks us through one where, you start up here, and then you do here, and you do here, and you do around your ears, and do on the top of your head. And then you always end right here, because this is closest to your heart, and it's a really good meridian point to, whatever that new information is that you want to get in and kind of soak it in and make sure that it stays there. This is a really good way to do that, and that's just, if you have affirmations or something that you use, I love myself, or I cherish who I am, or I accept who I am, or I want to live. So a lot of, some of the people that I have been talking to are veterans, and I actually recently partnered up with a woman who's running the Veterans Entering Transition program here in the Triangle. And, we have a number of veterans that we've been talking to, and there's 22 veterans a day right now that are committing suicide because of because of all the stuff that they're trying to overcome. So, it's very powerful. Not to mention, it's a huge epidemic in this country where they're coming back, they're abusing their wives and their children, and they're going to jail. Actually, right here in North Carolina, Fort Bragg is one of the worst inflicted places in the country. So this is something that's just really near and dear to my heart right now. I have a number of women that I talk to that, have been impacted. So, you know, and
And as you were saying, that it affects 8% of the population. I mean, that's a significant part of the
yeah,
population that is affected by it. And with women being so much part of it, I'm imagining that because women are suffering from it, that their children are as well. Because it's hard to be a good parent when you're suffering from things that, and it's so nice to know that these holistic approaches are effective in dealing with the manifestations of it. Because
yes,
so often we think that we have to run to the doctor, or that we need an expensive counselor or psychologist or psychiatrist to treat these issues. And that I think is a very common thought, is that you have to go to a high-priced professional in order to
no,
recover from it. I think that
no,
a lot of people give up before they begin when it comes to solving this issue. So I think that that's one of the most important messages we can get out there, is that you don't need necessarily to start with the highest priced professional out there, that you can
yeah.
use holistic approaches.
Yeah, well, I am a huge believer in if you can go medication free on anything, do it. They don't even know half of the stuff that's impacting people. They're making new medications every day that have harmful effects that who knows what they're doing. So,
I
I mean, not that I'm like a conspiracy person or whatever, but your body knows how to heal itself, and you have to trust that. So, if you can just help it a little bit by doing some holistic approaches or doing yoga, or, they're proving now that just by doing very simple things, getting enough sleep.
Yeah, and that's the simplest
Sitting.
one, the one that most mothers try to avoid.
Yeah. not,
Enough
not
sleep.
sitting all the time, getting up and moving. And moving is one of the most effective things to change your mood.
Well,
The most
Carol is
effective
going
thing.
to love that, because Carol just loves dancing. So, and I know that movement
Yeah.
therapy, music therapy is huge, huge, huge for her. So she's going to love hearing that.
Laughing. Laughing is a huge thing. Just start laughing every day. Just let yourself go and, laugh like you laughed when you were 5 years old and tickle about a fart. I mean, seriously, like that is a really, really powerful thing. And it starts all of the cortisol and like all the stuff that makes you happy. It'll get that fired up.
So what makes you happy can make you healthy, right?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And guess what? You don't need any medication for that. You don't need anything. You don't need money. You don't need anything. You can do that all by
Budget friendly.
yourself. It's budget friendly. Oh my gosh. Go outside. Walk around outside every day. That will dramatically change whatever emotional stuff you might have going on. Just go, and if you can't, get out and walk, go sit outside. Soak up some vitamin D, feel the fresh air, feel the sun on your face, like just experience life. And that will make a huge difference in whatever that emotional trauma is that you've gone through. And these are, when I was talking about, going through that last slide on keeping it going, keeping growing outside of, okay, I don't feel that tremendous heaviness anymore, but maybe there are still some things that I need to work through and get through. So keep it going. Just do that exercise and that self-care, and really just honor yourself and take care of yourself. And if something comes up, there's probably something attached to that. So start tapping and say, and I think I messed it up, but it's like, even though I have to read it because I can't ever remember when I'm like doing the thing. So even though, I really want chocolate right now, I'm just using that as an example. Even though I really want chocolate right now, I deeply and completely love and accept myself. So, I mean, it literally can be used for anything like that. And, you know, I think part of a huge problem, and, you know, we didn't talk about this, but when we talk about bullying or other things that are happening in our society that can actually cause PTSD, that feeling of not being enough, that can cause PTSD because you walk around with those thoughts in your head every single day. I'm not enough, so let me buy more stuff so I feel like I'm enough. Or let me eat more food because I can't handle whatever that feeling is that I have inside me. You know, let me drink too much, or, you know, let me do drugs, or let me do something to get over that feeling of not being enough, and that feeling of being alone, or whatever that is, whatever that feeling is. And it's so tragic that in our society today, we have all of these messages being fed to us from the media and from, you know, magazines and society and culture and, you know, all these things that are telling us that we're not enough. We're not skinny enough. We're not pretty enough. We're not this. We're not that. We're not smart enough. We're not rich enough, you know.
A lot of negative messaging going out in the world there. And so we do have a question that has come in from one of our viewers out there. And he asked, if it's no longer considered a mental illness, does that mean it's not an illness? And that's from Cheryl.
Yes. It's not an illness.
So there you have it. It's not an illness.
It's absolutely true. That's the thing. When you think about an illness, and, you know, there are people sometimes get this confused with what happens with traumatic brain injury. And traumatic brain injury is different because there actually is like a concussion or something that's causing, you know, improper brain functioning. But I mean, PTSD can do the same thing. It can, you know, because like I said, it shrieks the hippocampus. It promotes a lot of activity in the amygdala, and then it also has the reduction in the prefrontal cortex. So that also, but that can be repaired. That can be, if you start doing the things that I was talking about, all of that can be reversed. Your brain can heal. In fact, I don't know if you've ever heard of Dr. Daniel Amen. I recently went to this growth summit out in California, and Dr. Amen was there. I've actually seen him speak a couple of times, and some people, you know, are on the fence on him, but but he has done a tremendous amount of work over the last probably 20 years on brain function. And, you know, he's worked with people who've had concussions. He's worked with people who've had, you know, PTSD or, you know, multiple different things going on with their brain. And he has reversed the process so that he actually can heal, you know, help them heal their brain. And, you know, like even people that have Alzheimer's or dementia or something like that, like he can reverse that process by changing your diet, getting you on supplements. Like, it's not medication. It's, you know, changing your environment. Environment is a huge thing. If you are affected by abuse and you're still in that environment, you will continue to have PTSD until you get out of the environment, period. And then if you go right back into another relationship, you're going to have all those same feelings come up again and again and again. So you have to change your environment. And that's when I said that, you know, I broke out of my relationship, and, you know, I knew that I can't have this in my life anymore. I can't be around people who are drama people or, you know, want this in their life, because I mean, a lot of times you're in those relationships and you're attached to a bunch of other people that are alcoholics or drug addicts or whatever. And you're like, I'm done. I'm out of here. This is not my life anymore.
one of the ways that it gets normalized, I remember watching a scene from Goodfellas that really affected me, with all of the girlfriends and wives of the mafiosos, and they were all talking about being beaten or slapped and so on. And even though the one main character was said that, you know, her husband was never like that. Of course, later in the movie, he pulls a gun on her. So, but in that moment, that where all of those ladies are talking about their similar husbands, everybody's husband was like that. So why would they think that there'd be any different? And a lot of us get into those relationships or have been in family situations where it's not unheard of. And so it doesn't, there's a normalization of it. And you do have to pick up completely out of it.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, that's part of some of the things that I had to challenge my own mindsets on. I grew up in an abusive situation with my father was a drug addict and alcoholic, and you know, and that kind of relationships had happened through generations of my family. So I literally broke a cycle that had existed for who knows how many generations in my family. So you know, but you have to just have that courage to say no more, no more. And whatever that is, and you know, it does sometimes take something big. Like for me, it was I got pregnant, but you know, for other people, it might be something else. Something, you know, something finally flips that switch where you go, no more. I'm done. I'm not going to do this anymore. Unfortunately, we can't get people to that point like
any faster than they're meant to be.
Come on.
I know, if we could just go and flip that switch for them, then our job would be done here on Earth, and we wouldn't have to sell all these pretty clothes. Because you know, I mean, well, it's the truth. If we could go and do that, but I mean, it does have to come within ourselves. And Cheryl did say that helps. She responded back and said that question does help. Yeah, I mean, if we could go and flip the switch, that would be, you know, ideal. Unfortunately, we can't can't flip the switch for anybody but ourselves.
Right.
And in doing so, hopefully we can inspire others around us to do the same and to give them some hope at the end of the day. That, I mean, because there are so many challenges that affect somebody that is coming out of an abusive relationship. You know, those whole comfort factors that we've talked about before in this Free to Fly online conference and fashion show. We've talked about a lot of the factors that bring to this place. And we got a question from Sasha here, and she says, is there anything we can do that you've discovered that can help us inspire that switch sooner?
Probably the biggest thing that I have seen is to share your story with someone. Or find somebody, you know, if you haven't gone through that particular situation, find somebody else who has and introduce them in some very informal, non-threatening way.
Absolutely. And one little thing that I have done before is simply sharing the Duluth Wheel of Power Control.
Yes.
I find that has been a huge one for influencing a lot of women to realize when they see it on paper and they see those little actions and activities that go across the wheel and that power. I find that one's a really powerful tool, and I wish that they would just put them up in washrooms all over the place. You know, women's washrooms, men's washrooms, have them up there so people can see what it is, this power and control wheel, because that one was a real switch turner for me. And the other thing was the book by Lundy Bancroft, Why Does He Do That?
Why does he do that? Yeah, and I talk a little bit about that in my book too, is why did I get abused, or why did he abuse me, or whatever. And a lot of people don't understand the power and control wheel, and they don't understand that they have tactics, and you know, they know exactly how to manipulate you to get you into that relationship so that they can get that power and control. Their only goal is to get that power and control. And I actually have a video on my website that's gotten pretty significant, for over 400,000 views on my Facebook page. And it's all about giving up the dream. And that's one of the hardest things for women that are in abusive relationships. They have this honeymoon stage that they go through, and that abuser says, oh, I'm going to give you everything, and all of those feelings of not enough are going to go away when you're with me, because I love you, and I'm going to do all the things that you never thought you could ever have, and I'm going to be that knight in shining armor, and I'm going to give you white picket fence, and all of that stuff. And they suck you in and make you believe that they really love you, and then you're stuck, because then they start slow. They start, getting that power and control where they can. They start chipping away at your self-confidence, chipping away at how you feel about yourself, capitalizing on your weaknesses. And then you wake up one day and you're like, wait a minute, like, what happened? Like, how did I even get here? But it's such a mind game.
It is. It's all a mind game, and that's why it's so important to realize that it is a mind game, and we've got minds, and we can get out of it, because our minds can get us out of that space. And just because we have accepted in the past doesn't mean we have to accept it in the future. Right. One of the things that they use, or at least in my situation, is that you've already put up with it for so long. You knew what you were getting into.
Right.
There's that sort of that you made your bed, now sleep in it mentality.
Right.
Wrapped up in.
Yeah. So I put a quote on my Facebook page too, that I said, it's time to stop asking, why don't you just leave, and ask, how can I help?
Absolutely.
And
that's what we are definitely hoping to do here through the Freebird Project shop, with the Free to Fly online conference and fashion show, and with the fashions that we do have at the shop, because a portion of the proceeds does go to helping domestic violence victims. And so we're really proud of that, and we're so glad that you were able to make it. Now I'm going to just double check with Sasha here that there's no further questions, and we can get ready for the wrap up. It was so nice being able to talk with somebody who's actually had A, experience with survival, and B, the experience with PTSD that you have, because it is such an important component of that recovery process, whether we've been through an abusive relationship or a traumatic relationship. I know that there's been people who have lived through fires and other tragedies, and Sasha says, no, there's no more questions, but to make sure she knows how much she has loved this. She didn't want to come on the screen because she's not feeling well, and so she didn't want to be all yucky on screen, although I think she looks beautiful all the time. She doesn't quite believe it, but you know how that is. And
like I said, not enough.
And she says thank you. And so lovely the communication that we are able to have here. But thank you again so much for coming onto the show. And as you said, there's definitely some resources on your site, because it is devoted entirely to helping domestic violence victims to recover and heal. And I do think that you brought up one really good and interesting fact that we can't emphasize enough. Please do take the time to heal between relationships, because if you don't, you could end up in one that is just as bad or worse. You need that time to heal. Now, there's no saying that there is a particular amount of time that you need to heal. It's not counted in days or months, but you have to be in a space of health to have a healthy relationship. And I just wanted to emphasize that, because you brought that up with how you can continue to suffer from it if you don't take care of that.
Yes.
So before we wrap up here, is there anything that we missed talking about in tonight's presentation that you just want to get out there to the people that are watching this evening or in the future on the recording?
I guess my final thought would just be that nothing in your past defines what you are capable of. So don't ever think to yourself that this is just part of who I am. This is how my life is. This is how things are going to be forever. Don't just stop. Just stop thinking like that, because it can be dramatically different in the next moment than it was for the rest of your life. So just let it go. Just let it go and imagine yourself that you can have the life of your dreams, a life of passion, a life of happiness, and focus on that.
Thank you. And that is a delightful thought to end on, because it is true. No matter where you are or how you're feeling in this moment, you can make the decision. I almost sound like one of those altar call people, but it's not about that. But it is similar in the experience that it is a decision that you make in the moment that you can move forward and have a better life with. And you don't necessarily... Yeah. Anyways, I'll just not try and insult anybody out there, but yes, it is definitely truth that if you believe it, you can change your life, and it just takes a decision. And thank you so much again for joining us. This is Patricia with a Y, the Director of Operations for the Freebird Project shop.com and for the Free to Fly online conference and fashion show, which we are currently sponsoring and hosting because we'd like to reach all the wonderful modern hippie mamas out there and invite them to our conference where we have everything the modern hippie mama wants to know. Everything from PTSD to how to break up with sugar. We have had it all in the last 2.5 weeks, and we still have 4 weeks more of some great content coming your way. So thanks for joining us tonight, and be sure to join us on I think it's Saturday that we have our next presenters up to speak, and you can check that all out at thefreebirdproject.org. Thanks so much for joining us.
Bye.